Prince Andrew, we are being told, has decided to relinquish all of his royal titles and duties over the allegations linking him to sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein.
Jeffrey Epstein. How did you first become friends? How did you meet?
Well, we were close friends. I mean, we were friends because of other people.
The royal world has been rocked to its core as the final verdict in Prince Andrew's long and controversial saga has been delivered, and it's nothing short of devastating.
Andrew is still going to be a prince because, of course, he is the son of the former queen, but he is going to be royal in blood only. All the other titles, all of the other trappings, gone, but he gets to stay in a pretty nice house.
After years of scandal, investigation, and public outrage, the court has officially handed down its final sentence, marking the end of Andrew's royal future forever.
Prince Andrew is demanding a trial by jury and has formally denied all the allegations against him as he gave a court in New York his official response to allegations of sexual assault.
The shocking decision has left Buckingham Palace in silence and the nation in disbelief.
As you can imagine, there's been a swift reaction, not only on people on the streets, but also from the news media, including the headline this morning from the Sun newspaper, the headline reading, "Banned Old Duke of York."
What was revealed in court that sealed his fate? Today we uncover the truth behind Prince Andrew's downfall, the last bow of the Duke. Prince Andrew has agreed to relinquish his titles, including Duke of York, after discussions with King Charles. In a restrained statement, he admitted that ongoing allegations have overshadowed the royal family's work. Though retaining Prince, he loses a title granted by Queen Elizabeth II, signaling reluctant acceptance and public reckoning. Alongside the loss of his ducal title, Prince Andrew will also relinquish his membership in the Order of the Garter, the oldest and most prestigious order of chivalry in Britain, dating back nearly 7 centuries. The decision, while ceremonial on the surface, carries deep symbolic weight. It represents the final stripping away of the honors that once defined his place in royal society. The move follows years of controversy surrounding Andrew's association with Jeffrey Epstein, the late American financier and convicted sex offender, whose crimes shook the world of the rich and powerful. The prince has long been accused of maintaining a questionable friendship with Epstein even after his conviction, a relationship that led to damaging allegations from Virginia Giuffre, one of Epstein's alleged victims. In his statement, Andrew maintained his innocence, saying, "I vigorously deny the accusations against me." Yet the denial has done little to stem public skepticism. For years, the prince has faced unrelenting scrutiny, from his disastrous 2019 BBC Newsnight interview to his eventual withdrawal from public royal duties. The once adored action man prince, celebrated for his military service during the Falklands War, has seen his reputation crumble under the weight of scandal and silence. Sarah Ferguson, his ex-wife but longtime companion, will also lose her title as Duchess of York. It is yet another symbolic erasure, though their daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, will retain their titles. Both women, known for their loyalty to their father, have quietly supported him throughout the controversy, often seen visiting him at his Windsor home, away from the public eye. While the palace statement was restrained, the reaction beyond the royal walls was anything but. Many survivors of Epstein's abuse saw the move as long overdue, a moment of symbolic justice. The brother of the late Virginia Giuffre, who had accused Andrew of sexual misconduct when she was 17 at the home of Ghislaine Maxwell, told BBC Newsnight that this development was a joyous moment for survivors. He described it as a small but powerful acknowledgement that no man, no matter how royal, stands above accountability.
I've been on threads all day with survivors around the world that have been connected to Epstein and Maxwell, and it's just a joyous moment for them because we're finally getting some sense of acknowledgement that, like...
Tragically, Virginia Giuffre herself is no longer alive to witness this moment. Earlier this year, she died by suicide, her passing casting a somber shadow over the ongoing conversation about justice, power, and trauma. For many, her death was a painful reminder of the unseen toll of the Epstein scandal. one that continues to haunt victims and observers alike. Inside royal circles, the decision is being framed as a necessary sacrifice for the sake of the monarchy's stability. King Charles, who has made transparency and modern relevance central to his reign, is said to have been firm yet compassionate in his conversation with his younger brother. To some, it was a moment of quiet mercy. To others, a sign that even royal blood cannot wash away public disgrace. As Prince Andrew retreats further into private life, questions remain. Will this act of relinquishment be enough to restore dignity to the crown? Or will it stand as a permanent reminder of how deeply scandal can wound even the oldest of institutions? For now, the once proud Duke walks away without his titles, carrying instead the heavy burden of a name forever changed by controversy, and a nation watching closely to see what comes next. Does renouncing his royal peerage suffice? Is the disgrace restricted to the royal family or a national thing? What does the Parliament see in this? Let's find out. Mounting pressure over Prince Andrew's ties to Epstein. The fall of a royal is never quiet, but few have fallen with as much noise or disgrace as Prince Andrew. Once hailed as the Queen's favorite son, he now stands as one of the most scandal-stained figures in the monarchy's history. In 2023, the Crown itself cut ties, stripping him of his honorary military titles and silencing the use of His Royal Highness. For a man raised on privilege, it was a public humiliation unlike anything the House of Windsor had ever seen. But while the world focused on lawsuits, headlines, and rumored connections to Jeffrey Epstein, another story was brewing. Not one born in courtrooms or tabloids, but within the palace walls themselves. A story told not by lawyers or journalists, but by someone who lived in the shadows of his daily life, his former maid. Her name is Charlotte Briggs. And what she revealed about Prince Andrew is enough to make the scandals already attached to his name look tame. So what did Charlotte Briggs say? Keep watching to find out. Charlotte entered Buckingham Palace in 1996, a 21-year-old from Yorkshire who thought she'd landed a once-in-a-lifetime role. At first, she was tasked with routine duties, cleaning offices, taking out bins, and even sharing small human moments with royals who treated her kindly. She remembered Prince Edward holding the door open for her, an act of courtesy she hadn't expected. For 6 months, her job was simple. Then came the assignment no one wanted, serving Prince Andrew. What should have been a mark of trust quickly revealed itself as a nightmare. Andrew was 36 at the time, newly divorced from Sarah Ferguson, and living back in the palace on what was known as the nursery floor. Yet despite being a grown man, a military veteran, and a prince of the realm, his behavior, according to Charlotte, was more like that of a spoilt child than a war hero. She recalled her first taste of his temper, a rant over curtains. Andrew, seated just a few feet away, demanded she run up and down stairs to adjust them until they were exactly how he liked. When a sliver of light peeked through the top, his fury exploded. "Can't you do anything right?" he barked. Charlotte was left in tears, shocked that something so trivial could provoke such rage. This, she explained, was not an isolated incident. Tantrums were part of the job. His bed had to be turned down with military precision, pillows embroidered with the royal crest placed in the exact center, pajamas laid out neatly, and most bizarre of all, his teddy bears positioned just so. Miss a step, and Andrew would erupt. It wasn't just the demands that unsettled her. It was hypocrisy. This man fought in the Falklands, she remembered thinking. Yet he couldn't even close his own curtains. By contrast, other royals exuded dignity. Charles and Edward, she said, were wonderful. Princess Anne kept her distance but showed quiet respect. Andrew, however, was the rotten apple, the one who spoilt what could have been the job of a lifetime. Still, there were surreal moments. Charlotte earned £600 a month and even found herself standing on the royal balcony during Trooping the Colour. she was hugged by Nelson Mandela, a memory she cherished. But behind the grandeur, her daily reality was dominated by Andrew's petty demands. And then there was Sarah Ferguson. Despite their divorce in 1992, Charlotte claimed Andrew kept his ex-wife close in spirit, if not in body. His wardrobe, she alleged, still held her wedding dress. Her makeup remained neatly laid out on his dressing table, as though she might walk back in at any moment. For Charlotte, it was unsettling, a sign he hadn't let go, even as the world assumed he had moved on. Her stories didn't surface immediately. They came years later, in 2022, just as Andrew's life imploded under the weight of Virginia Giuffre's lawsuit. Giuffre alleged she was trafficked by Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and forced to have sex with Andrew when she was a teenager. Andrew denied it fiercely, but the damage was done. Against this backdrop, Charlotte spoke out, her memories adding another layer to the portrait of a man who demanded loyalty, but offered little humanity in return. And Charlotte wasn't alone in exposing the strange inner world of the Duke of York. Former palace guard Paul Page corroborated her accounts in an ITV documentary, Ghislaine, Prince Andrew, and the Pedophile. He revealed Andrew's obsession with stuffed toys, claiming his bed was covered with 50 or 60 of them. Maids were given a laminated diagram showing the exact placement of each bear. If one was out of order, Andrew's temper would explode. Even outsiders noticed. Writer Elizabeth Day recalled visiting Buckingham Palace in 2019, where she waited in a corridor opposite an oversized teddy bear perched on a chair. When she later asked Andrew about it, he laughed and explained it was a wedding gift from Sarah Ferguson. What might have seemed quirky in another context suddenly seemed strange when layered onto years of testimony about his childish demands. Through Charlotte's eyes, the myth of royal dignity crumbled. Andrew wasn't just a disgraced prince facing legal battles. He was, in her words, a bad apple, a man so consumed by entitlement that even the simplest tasks became someone else's burden. Her account was a glimpse behind the gilded curtain, and it was anything but flattering. For Buckingham Palace, silence was the chosen response. When pressed about Charlotte's claims, no comment came. It was the same tactic used for years: ignore, outlast, and hope the noise fades. But times have changed. Silence, once a shield, now amplifies suspicion. What makes Charlotte's revelation so powerful isn't just their content, but their timing. They surfaced at Andrew's lowest point, when public opinion had already turned against him. Her words reinforced the narrative that the man who once stood proudly beside his mother on the balcony was not a victim of circumstance, but an architect of his own downfall. As damning as Charlotte's account was, it wasn't the only one. The Duke and the dark web of Epstein. For years, he was seen as the favorite child, the one who could do no wrong. But behind the royal walls, Andrew was making choices and connections that would ruin him. The biggest stain on his reputation came from his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Through Ghislaine Maxwell, whom Andrew had known since her university days, he was introduced to Epstein back in 1999. At the time, it just looked like another high society friendship. The three of them were often seen together, moving through luxury homes and private parties. Epstein and Maxwell were even invited to Balmoral, the Queen's private estate in Scotland, a sign of how close Andrew had let them in. But soon, everything came crashing down. When Epstein was convicted in 2008 for sex crimes involving a minor, that should have been the end of the friendship. But Andrew didn't walk away. 2 years later, in December 2010, photographs showed him in New York, casually opening the door to Epstein's townhouse and strolling through Central Park with him. The images were damning. Andrew later insisted he cut ties with Epstein that same month, but emails told a different story. In February 2011, 2 months after he claimed to have ended things, Andrew wrote Epstein a message telling him to keep in close touch and hinting they would play some more soon. To make matters worse, that message came on the same day a photo surfaced of Andrew standing next to Epstein's victim, Virginia Giuffre, who was just 17 at the time, with Ghislaine Maxwell by her side. Giuffre's claims would haunt Andrew for years. She accused him of sexually abusing her on 3 separate occasions while she was still a minor under U.S. law, on Epstein's private island, in Maxwell's London townhouse, and at Epstein's Manhattan mansion. Andrew denied it all, saying the encounters never happened. But the evidence and her persistence kept the scandal alive. By 2019, Andrew decided to finally defend himself publicly, and it turned into one of the most disastrous interviews in royal history. Sitting down with the BBC's Emily Maitlis, Andrew tried to explain his side. He argued that Giuffre's memory of him sweating in a nightclub couldn't be true because he had been unable to sweat since the Falklands War. He also claimed he couldn't have been with her on the night in question because he had been at Pizza Express in Woking with his daughter, Princess Beatrice. The explanation sounded bizarre, almost laughable, and the lack of empathy for Epstein's victims made things even worse. The public backlash was immediate. Instead of clearing his name, the interview destroyed what was left of his reputation. Within days, Andrew announced he was stepping back from royal duties. He admitted his ties to Epstein had become a major distraction for the family. Even then, the Queen tried to show loyalty. She appeared with Andrew at Prince Philip's memorial service in 2021, walking into Westminster Abbey with him at her side. But her support couldn't shield him forever. By January 2022, with Giuffre's lawsuit moving forward in the U.S., Buckingham Palace took decisive action. Andrew was stripped of his military titles and royal patronages, and he could no longer use his Royal Highness. Positions he had once bragged about, such as Colonel of the Grenadier, Guards, Honorary Air Commodore of RAF Lossiemouth, and many others, were handed over to other royals. The disgrace was public and painful. And then came the settlement. In March 2022, Andrew reached a deal with Giuffre, agreeing to pay her millions of pounds to avoid a trial. Reports suggested the figure was as high as £12 million. As part of the settlement, he was also expected to make a donation to a charity for victims' rights. But people wanted to know, where did the money come from? Did it come from Andrew's personal fortune? Or did the Queen, or even Charles, help cover the cost? The palace never gave a clear answer, and the suspicion never faded. By then, Andrew's name was permanently linked with scandal. And just when it seemed things couldn't get any worse, another bombshell dropped. In late 2024, one of Andrew's close contacts, Chinese businessman Yang Tengbo, was barred from entering the UK. Authorities alleged he was tied to the Chinese Communist Party and posed a national security risk. Tengbo had reportedly visited royal residences at Andrew's invitation. Andrew insisted that nothing sensitive was ever discussed and claimed he cut ties as soon as concerns were raised. But by then, the damage was done. Yet again, his judgment was under fire. Piece by piece, Andrew's image crumbled. The leaked emails, the photograph with Giuffre, the disastrous BBC interview, the titles stripped from him, the expensive settlement, and even the Chinese spy scandal, each one chipped away at whatever respect he had left. Once the proud son of the late Queen, Andrew had become the most disgraced member of the royal family. He went from being celebrated as a war hero to being remembered for scandal, shame, and denial. And while he has continued to insist on his innocence, the truth is that his reputation never recovered. The Duke of York had fallen, and for many, there was no coming back. But to understand how steep that fall truly was, you have to go back to the very beginning, long before Epstein, lawsuits, or scandal. Because Andrew's story didn't start in disgrace. It began in secrecy, in a moment that caught even the Queen by surprise. More jarring revelations about Prince Andrew. Over the years, others have stepped forward with stories that paint the Duke of York in an even darker light. Stories of cruelty, entitlement, and outbursts that chipped away at the carefully crafted royal image. And now, a new book is adding fuel to the fire. Veteran royal biographer Andrew Loney's explosive new work, entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York, pulls back the curtain on Andrew once again. According to excerpts obtained by the Daily Mail, the prince's behavior towards staff wasn't just demanding, it was vicious. In one particularly shocking account, Andrew reportedly called a palace staffer a Fing imbecile for the crime of not using the Queen Mother's full title. The incident dates back to 2005, when a severe storm ravaged Northern Ireland. Afterward, Andrew asked David Anderson, the head of Hillsborough Castle, whether the property had suffered any serious damage. Anderson answered honestly, mentioning that a tree planted by the Queen Mother had been destroyed. But instead of gratitude, he was met with a cutting silence. Andrew then mocked him, repeating the phrase in a sneering tone. "Did you mean Queen Elizabeth? The Queen Mother?" What came next was even harsher. Andrew allegedly grilled the staffer, demanding to know how long he had worked for the royal family. When Anderson replied that he had been serving since 1984, the Duke snapped, "And you still don't know the proper way to refer to my grandmother? Get out!" It wasn't a slip of temper. It was a glimpse into the way Andrew, behind closed doors, dealt with those around him. According to Loney, the prince had a catchphrase he barked regularly at palace staff. "I want this done, and I want this done now." Do it. Orders weren't requests. They were commands, and any failure, however small, risked public humiliation. But Andrew's treatment of staff wasn't the only revelation in Loney's book. The biographer went further, pulling back the curtain on Andrew's strained ties with the younger generation of royals. His relationship with Princes William and Harry, according to the book, was problematic. And in one shocking claim, Loney alleged that things once turned physical. The excerpt describes a fiery confrontation between Andrew and Harry, sparked by comments the Duke had allegedly made about Meghan Markle. Behind Harry's back, Andrew was said to have dismissed the actress-turned-duchess as nothing more than an opportunist. The insult struck a nerve. Loney claimed Harry confronted his uncle in a heated argument that ended with a punch to the face. The Duke of York, according to the story, was left with a bloody nose. It's a claim that spread quickly, but it didn't go unchallenged. Harry's camp fired back immediately, branding the account as gross inaccuracies and damaging and defamatory remarks. A representative for the Duke of Sussex was clear. There had never been a physical fight between Harry and Andrew, nor had Andrew ever called Meghan an opportunist. Still, the allegations add yet another layer to Andrew's already fragile public standing. First came the lawsuits, then the maid's confessions, and now the words of a respected biographer tying his name not only to entitlement, but also to family conflict. Each story chips away at the image of a once proud prince, leaving behind something far less flattering. For Andrew, silence has become the default strategy. The palace offered no comment on Charlotte Briggs' stories, and they've given none here either. But as more insiders and authors step forward with their accounts, one thing is becoming clear. Prince Andrew's reputation isn't just damaged, it's unraveling. And with every revelation, the question grows louder. How much more is still to come? The truth is, Andrew's fall from grace wasn't triggered by a single revelation. His downfall wasn't sudden. It built up slowly, scandal after scandal, until the weight of it all dragged him down. Inside the Duke's downfall, Prince Andrew's story begins with secrecy. In the summer of 1959, Queen Elizabeth II was on a 45-day tour of Canada when she discovered she was pregnant. The palace kept it quiet during the tour, and it wasn't until August, after she returned to London, that the news was finally made public. On the 19th of February 1960, at 3:30 in the afternoon, the Queen gave birth in the Belgian suite at Buckingham Palace. Andrew was her third child, her second son, and the first baby born to a reigning British monarch since Princess Beatrice back in 1857. Less than 2 months later, on the 8th of April, he was baptized in the music room at Buckingham Palace. Like his siblings Charles, Anne, and Edward, Andrew's early years were shaped by a governess who oversaw his education in the palace before he was sent away to Heatherdown School near Ascot. In 1973, he followed the family tradition and entered Gordonstown in Scotland, where his father and brother had also studied. Andrew developed a reputation there, earning the nickname the Sniggerer because of his constant habit of cracking off-color jokes and laughing far too loudly at them. In 1977, he crossed the Atlantic for 6 months on an exchange program at Lakefield College School in Canada before returning to finish his studies. 2 years later, in July 1979, he left Gordonstown with A levels in English, history, and economics. That same year, the palace announced that Andrew would follow another royal path: military service. In November 1978, his intention to join the Royal Navy was made public. By December, he was being tested, interviewed, and examined at every level: RAF, Biggin Hill, HMS Daedalus, and HMS Sultan. He officially signed on for 12 years of service in May 1979. That September, he became a midshipman at Britannia Royal Naval College in Dartmouth, and even completed the grueling Royal Marines All-Arms Commando course, earning his Green Beret. By 1981, he was a sub-lieutenant, and soon after, he was training to fly helicopters. He started with the Gazelle and then moved on to the Sea King, a much larger, more advanced craft. In 1982, he joined 820 Naval Air Squadron, serving aboard HMS Invincible. That year, history came calling. Argentina invaded the Falkland Islands and the Royal Navy sailed south. The British government worried about the Queen's son being put in danger and wanted him moved to a desk job. The Queen, however, insisted he remain with his ship, and so Andrew stayed aboard Invincible, flying missions as a Sea King co-pilot. He took part in anti-submarine operations, missile decoy runs, and casualty evacuations, and even witnessed the Argentine attack on the SS Atlantic Conveyor. By the end of the war, when Invincible sailed home to Portsmouth, his parents were there waiting, among families of the crew, to welcome the ship back. Argentina had even reportedly planned, though never carried out, an assassination attempt on him in July 1982. For all his privilege, Andrew had faced real danger, and commanders like Nigel Ward later described him as an excellent pilot with promise. After the war, his naval career continued. He trained to fly the Lynx helicopter, rose through the ranks, and in 1984 was promoted to lieutenant and even appointed as the Queen's personal aide, a king in waiting, a family in ruins. The royal announcement in October 2025 didn't arrive out of nowhere. It was the buildup of years of hiding and pretending, and mounting internal pressure that had been building behind the polished facade of the British monarchy. For nearly half a decade, the royal household had been walking a tightrope as they tried to balance compassion for one of their own against the reality of public opinion. By early 2024, insiders described an unmistakable rift forming among senior royals. On one side were those who believed that Andrew had suffered enough. Most of them were traditionalists who claimed that family loyalty should outweigh public relations. On the other side stood a younger faction led by Prince William and Princess Anne, who saw the issue not as a personal matter, but as a constitutional one. They understood that the monarchy's survival depended on moral consistency. To allow Andrew's name to remain tied to royal representation, even symbolically, risked dragging the entire institution into a bad reputation. But decisions within the monarchy are rarely straightforward, and so, for months, there continued to be meetings upon meetings, pointing toward one inevitable conclusion. The odds were against His Royal Highness. For King Charles, the situation was profoundly painful. Before he became king, and let's play some more soon. To the casual observer, it may seem like nothing more than a friendly message, but context changes everything. Well, just a day before this email was written, the now famous photograph of Prince Andrew standing beside Virginia Giuffre and Ghislaine Maxwell had come up in global media. That image of the Duke of York with his arm around a teenage girl, who would later accuse him of sexual abuse, had already become one of the most controversial royal photos of the modern era. The problem was that in his 2019 BBC Newsnight interview, Andrew had declared that he had stopped all contact with Jeffrey Epstein in 2010. He even went further, describing their final meeting as a gesture of closure, insisting that any relationship had ended well before the public fallout. But the simple existence of that 2011 email completely contradicted that claim. Before legal correspondents released the email message to journalists, it was first sent to forensic analysts. The forensic analysis confirmed the message was sent from an official palace-linked domain, with routing signatures matching Andrew's correspondence network at the time. It couldn't have been forged. It was time-stamped and verifiable. Within hours, several emergency meetings had been held to assess the situation, while the Royal Communications Office remained silent, without issuing any immediate statement. A silence that only deepened speculation. Investigators, journalists, and historians drew a brutal conclusion. Prince Andrew had misled the public during one of the most scrutinized royal interviews in modern British history. Every quote from that BBC interview was suddenly re-evaluated. When he said he didn't regret his friendship with Epstein because it offered him useful connections, his tone seemed naive. Now, with the email in context, it felt manipulative. But do you think William might pardon his uncle in the future? Will Prince Andrew be able to redeem his image? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.